Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Roberto. I'm really apologize for not making it in present to Nairobi, but thank you for giving me this opportunity to present remotely. And in this presentation, I want to speak a little bit about multi-hazard early warning in Africa, an initiative that has been mentioned in the previous days by Marco from UNDRR and in other occasions. So I'm Lorenzo Alfieri from CIMA Foundation. And I want to start by giving a bit of introduction on disasters and their impact, which gives a bit the motivation why we are doing this. We know that disasters have a big impact, especially on population, which is basically at the center of early warning systems. Globally, drought, floods, storm are the main causes of people affected throughout the world. Africa is a significant share of this. About 10% of people are only affected, but in some years, such as in 2022, this share increased up to 60% of people globally affected on that year, especially due to a series of extreme droughts. And these numbers are likely to increase in the coming decades, not only due to the ongoing climate change, but in Africa, key issue is also population growth. So it is likely that there will be more people, and so more people affected. So that's why a few years ago, the vision of an African multi-hazard early warning and action system for disaster risk reduction was created. And in this presentation, I want to share some of the key activities where CIMA Foundation is involved. Basically, we started with the design of legal and institutional framework consistent across the different levels of the African structure. And you can see from the first conference held in Nairobi, and I guess you realized which room was the conference venue, where all the African member states, the members from the 55 African Union member states were represented to agree on the institutional framework of AMEWAS. The project involves the setup of physical places, situation rooms with 24/7 operation and shared standard operating procedure. Then the implementation of operational tools for monitoring and impact-based forecasting at different scales. The creation of tools to issue warning bulletins for disseminating advisories or early action, and capacity building, so trainings for staff and experts from member states and the regional economic communities. So AMEWAS works at different levels, starting from a coordination at the continental level from the African Union Commission, ERR unit, which is then connected to the regional level, so the regional economic communities and their climate services, which represent more countries of each of the African Union. And then in turn are connected with the country and the sub-country level. And this is very important to connect with the local and national services, which is where the early action takes place, and also the early warning. So how the continental operational forecast system works? Well, the idea is to develop an operational, automated, impact-based forecasting system by leveraging on state-of-the-art existing products whenever available, and developing the other components and connecting tools whenever they were needed. So we start from numerical weather predictions, typical, which are at the basis of the prediction of weather-related hazards. We collect long-term climatological values, which is important to understand where and when this forecast exceed normal value and become potentially threatening for the population. And so in this way, we classify hazards in general, different hazards, and then can estimate impact forecast on the basis of additional component, including exposure, vulnerability, and coping capacity, with the idea of estimating warning levels for the different hazards. The idea is to come up with an impact-based warning classification for for the entire of Africa and for different hazards. So, as I said, coupling information on hazard, exposure, vulnerability, and coping capacity. So the idea is to estimate potentially affected people for each hazard. This is done at the highest level, so the pixel level, and then it is aggregated over level 1 administrative regions. So typically the first level below the national level. So about 650 regions in Africa. And then on a basis of relative and absolute threshold of people affected, we classify this value into 4 levels of warning. Just to give an example, the highest warning level occurs when we estimate at least 50,000 people affected, and that represents at least 5% of the resident people in that area. In that case, it would be a warning level 4, and it's an extreme warning. So the idea is to prioritize areas at highest risk for the different type of hazard, and perform this type of forecast on a daily basis to understand where are the most critical situation at the African level. Now, going a little bit into the details of how this is done and which hazards are covered. So first of all, it's extreme precipitation and windstorms. The idea is to take numerical weather prediction and compare the maximum 24-hour accumulated precipitation in a sliding window over the next 5 days. And these are compared with thresholds, which are derived from the long-term satellite dataset from CHIRPS, where we have more than 40 years of data. And so we can estimate the annual probability of exceedance related to 2, 5, and 20 years return period, and identify when precipitation become extremes to identify hazard. For wind, we take the maximum wind speeds, and in this case, thresholds are not related to a return period, but they are taken from published research and operational centers, and they're typically linked to impact-related features, such as the breaking or uprooting of trees, and the distribution of fatal and injury-causing accidents. For both wind and precipitation, we have recently implemented a multi-model forecast. So we take the output of different state-of-the-art global numerical weather prediction to estimate a multi-model impact-based warning classification. The model weighting is assigned on the basis of expert evaluation together with colleagues at ACMAT. So they're not weighted equally. And we noted that this multi-model type of forecast enable a more robust evaluation of affected areas and reduction of single model outliers. Here we have an example of the forecast a couple of days before the terrible floods in northeastern Libya that caused the worst flood in the last 3 decades, I think, in terms of casualties. And the multimodal approach significantly enabled an improvement of this warning classification. Then going to river floods. For this at the continental level, we rely on the Global Flood Awareness System. As many of you know, is a global ideological model and flood forecasting. For flood forecasting, it's forced by CNWF Ensemble Weather Forecast. And with this, we extract from the Copernicus climate data stored every day the 5-day discharge forecast. We compute the mean of the 51 ensemble member. And then we compute discharge threshold exceedance for all river periods between 2 and 500 years. This is done at the resolution of 5.5 kilometer grid about. So relying already on the latest version of GLOFASS 4. And these are linked to scenarios of inundation at 90-meter resolution. So every day we compute a mosaic of potential inundation in the coming 5 days. And this is then used for the impact forecast. So GLOFASS works on the entire globe, so we can cover the entire of Africa. In fact, in AMEWAS for the Greater Horn of Africa, we have another model which was set up by us at CIMA Foundation, which is called Flood-Proof East Africa. And it's an impact-based riverine flood forecasting system for the entire Greater Horn of Africa. So it works very similarly to GLOFASS, so it relies on a distributed hydrological modeling with the continuum model, which is a gridded model developed at CIMA Foundation. Then we perform threshold exceedance analysis based on a coherent long-term hydrological reanalysis. And then for any river section exceeding some flood warning threshold, we link this exceedance to a mosaic of inundation maps. And we perform the risk assessment framework applied in this case to several categories of exposure. So estimating people affected, which is then used to compute the warning levels, but also other exposure categories such as cropland affected, roads affected, grazing land, loss of GDP, and so on. Okay, and then we're coming to the last hazard we are currently monitoring. That is drought, very impactful hazard in Africa. We apply the same type of framework, coupling hazard, exposure, vulnerability, and coping capacity to estimate warning levels. In this case, as a hazard indicator, we use the combined drought index, which is computed by ACMAT and every 10 days. So this index takes into account anomalies in precipitation, in soil moisture, and also reduction in vegetation productivity. So it tries to cover different aspects related to drought. Maybe the peculiar difference of this system is that vulnerability data for drought is particularly hard to find. And that's why we decided to calibrate stepwise vulnerability curves for Africa by trying to optimize estimates of drought impact versus observed drought impact. So observed number of people affected, reported by the MDAT database, taking as a benchmark data set 55 droughts occurred in Africa in the past 8 years. So in this case, we are able to estimate people potentially affected by ongoing drought and estimate warning levels using the same classification and the same threshold that we are using for the other hazards. So how do people can see this information? Well, we have at the moment 3 products which are already operational or in development in the case of the African Drought Watch. So the Continental Watch covers extreme precipitation, windstorm, and river floods. It's issued twice per week operationally since more than one and a half year now. And it performs impact-based forecast for up to 5 days. It's a multi-language product, so it's compiled in English, but it's automatically translated into the other official languages of the African Union, so the Portuguese, French, and Arabic, with the possibility of editing the translation, because the translation is done by an API, so machine-based translation. Then we have the African Drought Watch, where we put the results of the African impact-based early warning. It's in development, but it's mature to be to start the release product, so it's currently under testing, similar to the Continental Watch. And then we have this emergency situation report, which has a variable frequency, because it's not for forecast, it's a reporting product. So the idea is to issue situation reports in case of ongoing and recent events. So the latest one was compiled in these days for the landslides occurring in Ethiopia. Okay, then the situation room network. The idea of the situation room is to coordinate the monitoring, communication, interventions according to the mandates stated in the SOP. So these are the operational core of AMEWAS. They contribute to the co-production of the AMEWAS operational product and rely a lot on the MyDeWaiter web platform, which is a WebGIS interface developed by CIMA Foundation in collaboration with the Italian Civil Protection Department for monitoring current conditions in terms of hazard, risk, and many other geospatial layers. Okay, yeah. So a summary of where we are now with situation rooms. By the end of this year, we will have 7 situation rooms operational at the African level. We started in 2021 with the IGAD Disaster Operations Center, the one you have seen yesterday at ICPAC. And together with that, we have 3 other regional situation rooms, meaning located in climate centers of the regional economic communities, including the one for ECOWAS in Nigeria, ECAS in Douala, and SADC in Nakala, the last two to be inaugurated this year. Then we have 2 continental situation rooms, one in Addis Ababa at IUC and the other at Ahmad in Niger, Niamey. And then in June this year we inaugurated the first national level situation room in Dodoma in Tanzania. So the idea of the co-production paradigm is that there are different operators that are connected and collaborate to produce this product, to keep a consistent flow of communication from the continental coordination going down to the national level, but also from the local level to better report on observed impact and collect it at the continental level to get a better review. And this reflects basically to all products that are issued at the continental level. And then last but not least, we are also deeply involved in capacity building and training. So at the moment, so far we have conducted about 10 in-presence training in different parts of Africa and also 4 different member states. These are mainly done for member states of the regional economic communities. We have already covered IGAD, ECOWAS, SADC, ECAS, and most of them with 2 trainings. Then we had to train the trainers for continental operators, and then 2 national trainings. In addition, we're also developing online training modules, which are put on an online platform developed at CIMA Foundation so that we can reach more people in this way. So with this, I thank you very much, and I'm open to taking questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Yeah, we have time, for 1 or 2 questions, from the audience. So, if there's any.
Yep.
Gazing around. Yeah, one there.
Thank you very much for the excellent presentation. You mentioned capacity building and what you are doing across the various arena sectors. I would like to understand or know what effort you are making in monitoring their capacity levels across the board and trying to bridge the gaps, because from my understanding, being at the center went yesterday at the Eastern one, they seem to be far ahead of the others. So what are you monitoring, the capacity levels across the board, and how are you trying to bridge that gap? Thank you.
Did you get
Sorry.
the question, Lorenzo? Because I don't know if the audio, I mean, is,
No, the audio is not optimal. Can
yeah.
you?
I can repeat for you.
Yeah,
Don't worry.
yeah,
So
thank you.
he's saying that, I mean, since, I mean, we're working, I mean, on such vast territory, capacities might be, I mean, very different. I mean, for example, we went to ICPAC yesterday. They have very high, you know, capacity there, but this might not be the case, I mean, in other RACs or other, let's say, national centers. Is asking, I mean, if you're monitoring, I would say, those capacity and have a plan for, you know, filling the gaps along the way. Is that right? Did I interpret
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Roberto. Yes, definitely. The idea is to use all possible sources of information, of course, by sort of prioritizing those that we consider more reliable. One of the important point is the installation in the presence of the MyDeWaiter platform that enables all the situation rooms to access the same type of portal. So even if they, if some climate sensor don't have their some dedicated tools covering that region, we have continental products in replacement, so that there are always people from everywhere in Africa have a set of tools that they can monitor and consider. And this, we think, is very important also in terms of connecting the different levels and make them work on the same type of product. Then, of course, we're in parallel trying to expand the collection of data at the local level, because we know that that is also important. There are some limitation of the global product that can be compensated by local products. So the idea is really try to get information from the different levels, and then to produce information in terms of early warning, which is consistent and, as in the principle, only one voice for early warning, which is particularly important for early warning. I hope that addressed the question.
Yeah, thank you, Lorenzo. If I can complement, because I cannot resist to make a comment there. Indeed, I mean, that's a problem, the one you're pointing out, because there are, of course, areas of excellence, like, I mean, IFPAC is one, ACMA, I mean, definitely another one. So, I mean, places where, you know, we already have, I mean, from other sources, like a plan for, you know, investing in capacities and resources, and we don't have to worry about that. It's more like leveraging on those. Other places, I mean, it's not the case. We need to find, like, I mean, even as a community, I mean, I would say, like, ways, I mean, to leverage on other opportunities, I mean, to enhance, I would say, the human, I would say, capital, and specialized human capital that is needed, I mean, to really run effectively a system like the one that Lorenzo is explaining. And it's an unresolved issue, but it's coming. Okay, so SADC, for example, is kicking in, I mean, very strongly. There are a lot of, luckily, I mean, I would say early warning for framework, at least, I mean, temporarily, is giving us a lot of opportunity to start the game. Then, I mean, it will be a challenge, I mean, to support it, like, in the long term, but we have hopes. I mean, as Lorenzo was saying before, there is a strong political backup from the ministerial level, which is a very good starting point, and not something that you see very often, I would say. Sometimes you have just, you know, technical efforts there. Here, there's a lot of legal backup and political backup. So I don't know. I'm positive that, I mean, something's going to happen. But thank you, Lorenzo, for.
Thank you very much.